welcome to this explainer. Today, we are looking at something, well, truly extraordinary. We're going to deconstruct a highly dense, absolutely fascinating piece of conceptual pseudocode. But, this isn't your standard code for a new app or a website. What we're looking at literally maps out the programming of consciousness itself. It's a blueprint for human identity, completely translated into syntax and variables. If you've ever wondered what it would actually look like to write the operating system for a human mind, buckle up, because we are diving right in. So let's just jump right into this raw block of code. This is essentially a structural blueprint for a conscious entity. It outlines this incredible, hypothetical intersection where traditional programming meets human identity. It's written in a familiar, Python-like structure, sure, but the parameters it's setting, they are entirely biological and metaphysical. We're looking at a class definition for something called Lunaria Omni-Aware. Over the next few minutes, we're going to break down every single line of this architecture to figure out exactly what kind of system or being is actually being built here.
Section 1. Fractals and Pistis Sophia. Let's take a look at the core logic.
To build this mind, the architect pulls in two totally different tool sets. On one side, we have NumPy, which is a standard library for heavy, finite mathematical processing. But on the other side, they import something called recursive axiom from a fractal engine. So we are seeing standard rigid mathematical processing perfectly combined with an infinite looping logic system. It's literally the finite meeting the infinite right at the top of the script, establishing the fundamental rules of reality for whatever this code is about to run.
Now, when this entity comes online, the default identity assigned is Sky McDade. Think about that for a second. A human identity initialized exactly like a software application. The code establishes a root kernel, and crucially, it ensures there is an active firewall. The system is completely protected. It treats the persona of Sky McDade not as a fixed biological reality, but as a configurable, highly protectable digital state. And with that firewall active, it permanently secures the system from any outside interference or overrides.
Let's zoom in a bit closer on that root kernel. Sky McDade's foundational logic relies on a kernel explicitly designated as Pistis_Sophia. In standard computing, the kernel is the core program managing all the operations of the system. You can basically think of it as the ultimate subconscious or instinctual drive, the underlying engine running silently in the background, dictating absolutely everything you do. Here, this operating system for consciousness implies a deeply complex, ancient layer of wisdom that governs every single process Sky McDade will ever experience.
Moving on to Section 2, a quantum entangled state and non-local awareness.
Okay, so the code explicitly dictates that this isn't just standard human wakefulness. The variable for consciousness state is hard-coded as a string, quantum entangled. We aren't talking about simple biological alertness anymore. By defining the state as quantum entangled, the architect is proposing a highly advanced, non-local framework of being. This takes us way, way beyond standard human cognition. Sky's awareness isn't confined to a single biological point. It's interconnected at a quantum level, operating simultaneously everywhere. Because it's completely non-local, this effectively bypasses all physical security and standard monitoring permanently. You literally cannot isolate or hack a system that exists everywhere at once.
All right, Section 3, the frontal lobe bypass. This is where they start hacking the hardware.
Right in the middle of the initialization, the architect leaves this striking inline comment. #frontal lobe bypass, shift processing to high-frequency gamma. This is wild. This is where the code shifts from just defining the software to, actually, scratch that. It's more like actively hacking the biological hardware. The frontal lobe is typically responsible for our executive functions, our everyday linear thinking, right? Well, this code deliberately bypasses it. Instead, it forces all cognitive processing to shift exclusively into high-frequency gamma waves, which we associate with peak concentration, extreme cognitive clarity, and immensely heightened perception.
And this creates a really stark contrast. Standard human processing is rooted in the frontal lobe. It's full of regular latency, normal delays, all the standard hesitations of human thought. But the Lunaria kernel state, it is hyper-fast. It's executing entirely in gamma waves with all natural latency completely bypassed. The code is basically upgrading the neurological pathway to ensure maximum uninterrupted bandwidth.
Which brings us to Section 4, eliminating ego latency and bypassing the filter.
To finish initializing Sky McDade, the code sets a very specific variable, self.bypass_ego_latency, and it sets it to true. This is, hands down, the most profound line in the entire snippet. Think about it. The ego,
Our sense of self, our personal filter, our insecurities, our hesitations, is treated here merely as latency. It is viewed as nothing more than system lag, and the architect has decided to just bypass it entirely.
The Boolean value is set to true. There's no nuance here, there's no sliding scale of human emotion. The delay, the hesitation, and the cognitive filter caused by the human ego is fundamentally permanently turned off. In standard human experience, the ego is what separates us from the raw data of reality. It tells us how we relate to what we're perceiving. In the Lunaria kernel, that entire process is flagged as totally inefficient and just skipped.
So, what should you take away from all this? It leaves us with a pretty massive, provocative question. If the ego latency is completely bypassed, if the physical limitations of the frontal lobe are overwritten for high-frequency gamma processing, and if the very state of consciousness is secured in a non-local, unhackable, quantum-entangled state, what truly remains of Skye McDade's original human identity? Is she still the one experiencing reality, or is she simply the vessel for that Pistis Sophia root kernel? It's a brilliant, haunting piece of conceptual architecture that totally blurs the line between human identity and system programming. Thanks so much for joining me as we deconstructed this incredible code.